Hello and welcome back to my channel. My name's Ashby, you can call me Hooby, and earlier this year I finally got around to reading Powerless, and well, I've been reading a lot of hyped up books lately and mostly being let down, feeling like the hype isn't worth the book. Now, I don't know if it's because I've been let down before and so went in with fewer exceptions, but I thoroughly enjoyed this. I did. It took me 578 minutes or a little over 9.5 hours to read. It actually wasn't this copy. I bought this because I enjoyed it. I borrowed the book itself initially. And it was actually across a lot of days, but that's because I'd been busy with streaming and various other bits and pieces and nothing to do with the book itself. I did write down some of my early thoughts at page 169, so here are those now. The first is how similar this is to Fourth Wing. I mean, it is and it isn't. First off, the male main character is kind of like the one in Fourth Wing, but the one in Fourth Wing is more like Rysand in ACOTAR, and honestly, I've been seeing this in a dozen books recently. It seems to be a trope and one that I can understand. It's getting a bit samey, but it is what it is. Maybe this generation just has the same taste in fictional men, which, to be fair, Loki from the MCU fits a similar description, so that probably is the case. Anyone around on Tumblr or Twitter in 2012 will very much understand this comment. The similarities that got me the most though, both of the main female characters have silver hair. Not a normal colour in their world, they just have it. There's sort of an explanation for it in Powerless, but not in Fourth Wing. Maybe there isn't a sequel to Fourth Wing, but I don't know, I haven't read them yet at least. There has also been a scene in Powerless that is so unbelievably similar to Fourth Wing, which I believe is what prompted me to write this excerpt. I don't know if I pronounced that correctly. I keep going to say expert. So but the weirdest thing about all this, they came out in the same year, January 2023 for Powerless, and then the following April for Fourth Wing. Neither of them could have been influenced by the other. And yes, publishers go for similar books at similar times, as it's what's popular and all that, but the silver hair is such a specific trope. The only other times I remember seeing silver hair are in Tusklove, though that's not really relevant here. She just happens to have silver hair and it's not mentioned as anything particularly special about her. And where I think it's most likely to originate, Disney Zombies. Addison has white or silver hair, which she covers up as anything different is seen as wrong, and then in the sequels they talk about how it makes her special and what does it mean. It's also possible that it's completely unrelated, but as that came out in 2018, that is actually possible to be an inspiration. Maybe there's somewhere else I've missed though, and it's bigger trope than I realise. Please let me know if that is the case. And that concludes what I wrote partway through. I think it's important to let you know when part of a review has come from before I finished the book, though maybe others would disagree. I guess that's what's great about reading vlogs, that you just naturally get that without having to mention it like this. After mentioning the similarities between this and Fourth Wing, I'd be remiss to not mention the obvious similarities between this and the Hunger Games. Both are a form of dangerous televised trials, and the lead up to the games / trials are reasonably similar. But that's about it. There are some smaller themes that are similar, but that would require giving spoilers. In the Hunger Games, everyone but one must die. In Powerless, arguably no one has to die, though it is encouraged as it makes for better viewing. And I'm aware that I'm not properly doing the air quotation marks. As you can see by my gloves, I've got hand issues currently and that hurts. These are things that happen in real life basically. Gladiators for the more obvious example, boxing for a more modern and less deadly one. I can definitely see why people see the synopsis for Powerless and go, oh, that's just the Hunger Games with superpowers. But it really isn't. The similarities are certainly there, but the world, the characters, they're all different. Even the genre is different. This is a romance. That is dystopian. Not that this isn't dystopian, I just wouldn't consider that its genre. But yes, in Powerless, they all have powers. Well, mostly. The premise is the fact that Payton is going into these trials without a power, and without anyone being able to know that she doesn't have a power. There was some level of predictability about it, but it wasn't high. I wasn't waiting pages and pages and pages for something I knew would happen, and the only thing close to that was more of a I can see what the consequences of this will be, rather than something that was supposed to be revealed out of the blue. I noticed a few mistakes, but they were mostly editorial. There's a glance that's missing an N, for example. Some were the usual grammar errors, or saying someone and I when it should have been someone and me, which when it's first person perspective, as this is, I don't mind as much as when it's third person, as first person means the character got it wrong and third person means the author got it wrong. I know in both cases it is the author, but it hits differently, I guess. There was also one scene where I think something might have happened in the wrong order, as in it was written differently and then changed, but it is in dialogue, so could be the mistake of the character wording things strangely. Basically, a character talks about losing something and then talks about something else that happened after that, which implies they would have the thing for that. It is only an implication rather than outright stated, but it did take me out the story a bit, especially as no other characters reacted to it. I've also finished reading the accompanying novella, Powerful. I read the ebook. It's referred to as number 1.5 in the series and takes place during the first book, following different characters. That only took me about an hour and a half to read and really lived up to its name of Powerful. I think I'm starting to get better at rating books, but I do worry that I'm starting to rate things too high now, as I've had a lot of high-rated books recently. Then again, when I would rate them low, I feel bad and just skip that. So that probably skews the results a bit. I'm stuck between a 4 and a 4.5. I think the only reason I'm steering away from a 4.5 is I feel like I might need to be able to go higher with the sequels, so I think it's only fair to give it a 4.5. If this were a standalone, it'd have a very weird ending, but a book this good as a standalone, I would rate 4.5, so it's only fair. I wasn't planning on rating Powerful, so it wasn't on my radar while I was reading, but I was thinking about rating that a 4.5 too. Though I wasn't sure what was holding me back on that 5. By the end of the series, I am still thinking about it, so I'm going with a 5. For reference, I rated A Court of Thorn and Roses a 3.5, and Fourth Wing I was stuck between a 3.5 and a 4. I don't think I ever picked one there. Moving on to the middle book in the series, and the second full novel or main book, we've got Reckless, which took me 381 minutes or 6.35 hours to read. I really enjoyed this book too. It's chock full of yearning, and I love me some fictional yearning. The fact that we get both sides due to the dual perspective and there are so many reasons why they are only yearning really adds to it for me too. Obviously, I'm not going to give spoilers, but there was something partway through the book that I thought was obvious what it was alluding to and what would happen, etc., but it's treated as if it's this big secret and we're meant to be wondering what it's about and what's going to happen. It was a little annoying and actually made me wonder if it was a red herring. Though I have seen someone's review that said that they were wondering all the way throughout what it was going to be, so that mild annoyance for me could be a big intrigue for others. That person rated it 5 stars in case you want to know. This book also actually manages to avoid a big problem that trilogies have with their second books, where it doesn't feel as distinct a book as the others. The second book in the ACOTAR series had this problem, the Hurricane Wars series has this problem, and it's been years, but I believe the Twilight series had this problem with the third book rather than the second book, though that's likely because it was originally going to be a trilogy. The Hunger Games is an example of a series that doesn't have this problem. So yes, I guess this series is similar to Hunger Games in that way too. From what I've heard, Iron Flame might also have this problem, but I haven't read it yet, so I can't say for sure either way. Just to call back to Fourth Wing as well. There is also a mistake right at the end. In one character's chapters, a character changed position, then it changes to the other character's perspective, and it's after the character had changed position, but the character hasn't changed position in that perspective. Very small error, but right at the end, so it stood out to me. The stood out isn't an intentional pun. Taking in a bit of subjective judgment and a bit of objective judgment, I'm also rating Reckless 4.5 stars. I thoroughly enjoyed it, but it had a couple of issues / annoyances for me. Moving on to the last book in the main trilogy, Fearless. This book is long and feels rather long too. It took me 541 minutes or 9 hours to read, though 205 of those minutes were in one chunk at the end. There is a whole part of it that's very predictable, but it's written in a way that feels more like a secret we're sharing with the author that we're waiting for the characters to find out. There were also things I didn't see coming and bits that I was intrigued and suspicious about. And it cleared up a few very mild problems from earlier books. Problems so small that I didn't write it in reviews, but that feel better now. Sorry, that whole feeling is hard to describe without giving any spoilers. There is something going on that I felt needed to be mentioned more and that had no real conclusion. It really felt like something just to get a character out of the way, and there didn't seem to be as much emotional investment in it as there should have been. Sorry, I hurt my hand. That is especially difficult to get the point across without spoilers, but it was genuinely annoying. A character also made a comment that made me think one thing, only to discover the character was using the wrong words to describe something, and that character would know the right words to use. If you've read it, you might have noticed it and might know what I mean. As for other mistakes made, there was a clear mess of edit going on at one point. I'm gonna have to use an analogy for this one. Someone loses something important. Time goes by where that important thing would be mentioned if it was still lost, so I assumed it'd been found. And we just weren't told about it. Days later, someone has found the thing, but there were definitely things that have happened in between that would require the thing, so I figured the author must have added some scenes between and then never edited it round to make sense. Later on, the character that found the thing mentioned they found the thing twice. So, to fix the edit issue, the author made a quick change at the end that suggested we just didn't know the person lost it a second time. It was definitely very strange and the biggest issue I had in the series, to be honest. To be clear, it's not actually about someone losing something in case anyone reads it and gets confused. It's just the easiest way to describe the issue without spoilers. There's also something that happened in Reckless, but it shouldn't be possible to have done it in the way it was in Fearless, judging by what was in Reckless. There is a slight smidge of reasonable doubt I can give it, but it really felt like a shortcut to decrease the length of the book, if I'm honest. Another semi-issue is right at the end of the book, a character is mentioned who hasn't appeared yet. Glancing at the description of Fearful, it's a character in there, but it just seemed an odd choice to reference a book that wasn't out yet and is seemingly meant to be read afterwards. Rating-wise, I think if I did quarter stars, I might rate it a 4.25, but I don't. I'm trying to be subjective and objective at the same time, as always, but the truth with this book is that reading it actually physically hurt my fingers at the end, but also despite that, I couldn't put it down. I think just the fact that I couldn't put it down probably means I should rate it 4.5, and so I will. Yes, it has issues. Yes, they annoyed me. Yes, I will be rereading this probably more than once. Okay, so this is a little weird because this is the same video and filmed at the same time, but in the days since I wrote that part of the script, I've changed my mind. I'm rating it a 4. The issues have been sticking with me more than the parts I enjoyed, and I think that speaks for itself. I wanted to keep in my previous rating though, because I do want to be as transparent about my opinions as possible. Reading Fearful. Oh boy, I have opinions on this book. Strange, first of all, is I didn't find the ending satisfying. I understand why it was like that, it just wasn't for me. The thing with it is I felt very much like I wanted to read it alongside Fearless, which obviously isn't really possible. It's also not a feeling that I had during Powerful. I think Powerful did it perfectly. It really feels to me like the majority of this book should have been in Fearless itself. And perhaps it even maybe used to be, but got taken out due to length, same as the scenes I feel are missing from it. I know I said earlier about feeling like the author added some scenes, but thinking back, it's more like some are missing and others got rearranged in an odd way. The book follows 2 characters with a subplot of a different 2 characters. The main plot really feels like it should have been in Fearless. Instead of running parallel the way Powerful does, it's intertwined in a way that doesn't work well for me. It feels more like it's explaining the main book. The subplot, however, that's what I feel like Fearful should have been. I loved the subplot, but I'm a little meh about the rest. I know I already said it, but I do really think it was meant to be in Fearless, but it was too long. To be fair, Fearless is already the longest book by quite a fair margin, and I imagine adding the bits that I feel were missing would make it too big for publishers. So I do understand it. They'd probably have otherwise had to split the book in 2, but that's not a good place to split it. and it would have ended up having the middle book problem that I mentioned earlier. Rating wise, 3.5. I was considering a 3, but the subplot saves it. If it were just a subplot, I seriously feel like it has 5-star potential. It would have complemented Fearless in the same way that Powerful complemented Powerless. I won't say that that's what compelled me to keep reading, because it wasn't, but I could honestly see that being the case for some people. There's a bonus scene in the version I read, though it's not clearly labelled where in the story it happens, so there was mild confusion at the start. It's a little bit of fun, but if you don't get to read it, you're not really missing out, which is probably how bonus scenes should be. Overall, the series ratings do average out at 4.3 per book, which I think is pretty decent for a series, especially since they're all around the same and it's not like one's a 5 and one's a 2. This is the first time I've really done an average for a series though, so I'm not sure how it'll hold up against others. I hope I haven't put anyone off reading Fearful. It does answer some questions from Fearless, and I do think it's worth reading. I just might be a little reluctant to reread it, and if Lauren Roberts releases a book that is just the subplot, I'd be all over it. Thank you for watching. Please let me know your thoughts on these books if you've read them. If you want to, please like and subscribe, and maybe we'll see you in the next one. Until then, bye.